Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is Thursday, January 26th, 2023. And today we are waiting for a special guest, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. She's currently in a meeting and we're hoping to get her on in about 10 to 15 minutes. But in the meantime, we are going to talk about some of the breaking news that we have today and some of questions that you have burning for me. If you have any questions, please be sure to drop them in the chat. I can see it on my end. So we will be sure to get to them in the meantime. But let's first start off with some breaking news, which is that right before we went live, Adam Schiff announced his run for the U.S. Senate to represent California and also to replace Dianne Feinstein. As some of us may know, Katie Porter was the person who announced first, and it'll be an interesting, I think, comparison to see the difference between Adam Schiff and Katie Porter. Personally, I think both are great candidates. Obviously, Katie Porter is someone who is in the House, who has really kind of shown the backbones of, not the backbones, but really shown the transparency and the process at which kind of these big businesses and these CEOs operate and really expose them for some of their shady practices. And I think she's been an essential voice in the House. Obviously, a few weeks ago, she was pictured reading this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an FUC, expletive. And it was a really interesting kind of image to see just Katie Porter, I think, showing her true authenticity. She's someone who I think is very likable, obviously represents Orange County in California, which is a pretty red area. And so she's able to reach to a lot of people. And I think Adam Schiff is also someone who obviously has been a democracy defender. He is someone who has really protected democracy when it's most fragile, being the first impeachment manager during the first impeachment of Donald Trump, and then later serving on the January 6th committee. So, I think both are great candidates, and we will all see what happens on that end. Personally, I'm not putting my money for anyone quite yet, but I'm curious to see what any of you all think about what you think between a race between Adam Schiff and Katie Porter. And there's also words that maybe Barbara Lee from the U.S. Senate will also join the race. So it'll be a packed Senate race. And I think, for democracy, it's good to see so many candidates who are qualified, who are principled, who really have to fight for the vote. And this is going to be, I think, a stark contrast to a lot of those Republican races that we've been seeing, where it's been nothing but, a platform of lies and chaos and division. And so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this race unfolds. And as you know, I'm at UCLA, which is in California, and so I'm definitely excited to be in the scene where it all happens, so to speak. Next, we have this bit of a disturbing piece of news. Yesterday afternoon, we saw that Donald Trump is poised to be back on Instagram and Facebook. Basically, Meta, which is the company that oversees Instagram and Facebook, said that they will be reinstating Trump in the coming weeks. And, to me, this is a really disturbing decision. You have someone who incited a violent insurrection, who on his Truth social media platform is still spreading dangerous lies about the election, about democracy, spreading racist, really bigoted, sexist remarks. And this is really just hurting democracy. He's someone who has a huge platform. And I think you can make an argument for free speech, but when it comes to hurting democracy and endangering the principles that we live by, I think it's a really concerning move. And, I was disturbed to see this statement by the ACLU basically saying that Donald Trump deserves to have a platform as someone who is able to reach a lot of people. And, I agree, maybe under normal circumstances, if we had a president who actually admitted facts and who follow the law, I think that would be a different case. But I think, in the end, it's a pretty disturbing thing for me to see Donald Trump back on these social media platforms. And he's someone who's going to really sow, I think, a lot of continued division and chaos and maybe even violence, depending on whether or not he's accountable. So I think there's kind of two things. And Andrew Weissman yesterday, I saw this quote, what is the theory now for Meta, that we're going to let bygones be bygones, that, someone can just incite an insurrection and the penalty is 2 years. I think it's not a great decision by Meta, and I just really hope that Jack Smith is doing his work, that the Department of Justice is doing their work, because every single day it seems like they're really posing a threat to democracy. And I see right now we have Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Thanks so much for being here.
Victor, it's so great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So as our audience knows, you currently serve in Congress and you have been such an essential voice in pushing many of the progressive policies that we've seen pass in this administration. And so I want to start off by asking you about what we've seen in Congress over the last 3 weeks. This is your third term in the House, and it got off to a rather unusual start with Kevin McCarthy trying 15 times to become Speaker. And I'm wondering now that he's Speaker, what you can tell us about what you've noticed from Kevin McCarthy as Speaker and how Republicans have attempted to govern.
Well, Victor, several months ago, I said people used to have this narrative that they would try to spread about Dems in disarray. And I never thought that was true. We got so much done and we were so unified in delivering for people over the last 2 years, phenomenal wins. And I predicted that we would see Republicans in ruin. And that's actually what I have seen, with the speaker vote. The chaos was somewhat limited to the House floor. But my real concern is the concessions that McCarthy made to his extreme MAGA Republicans. Not even everybody in his party is happy with the concessions that he made, because there are some moderate Republicans who are more interested in governing, let me put it that way, but they're being overtaken by these extremists. And so what we're seeing now is all the things that McCarthy promised to people that are coming through, right? Like extreme laws around abortion, making abortion legal as being one of the first things that he put forward in terms of bills. The bill, the Republicans are proposing a 30% national sales tax, crazy things like this, but it's also now going to be about the debt ceiling. And are they going to shut down the government in order to cut people's Medicare and Social Security? Or are they going to do the responsible thing and just understand that we need to lift the debt ceiling and continue funding for essential priorities?
Absolutely. And I want to ask you about the fair tax policy, or it's not a fair tax at all, but I want to ask you about that tax policy a little later. But you mentioned concessions, and that was to me also one of the most concerning things about the vote for Kevin McCarthy. There was that one big moment where Matt Gaetz voted no, and then minutes later he changed his vote to, I think it was present. And so I'm wondering if you can give us any sense of what those concessions were and how we've seen that translated so far in terms of how they're governing in the House.
Well, I don't think we know all of the concessions, but we certainly know that some of it was about committee placements. So if you look at, there are several extreme MAGA Republicans that are on the Rules Committee, several that have gotten appointments on judiciary or oversight. Now, some of that, we were able to, as the Progressive Caucus chair, we were able to get our members on key committees without taking things to a breakdown where we had 15 votes. We just negotiated with our leadership and got it. And that shows the difference between us and the Freedom Caucus. But the extreme weaponization of government committee that they have, it's going to be a terrible attempt to just attack Biden. I think that's also another big one. And I think gutting ethics is another big concession that they made. They want to gut the Ethics Commission. They're basically trying to do everything they can to prevent people who were involved in January 6th in the insurrection, either by being there personally, by helping, or under investigation. They're trying to protect those people and ensure that there's no accountability.
And against that backdrop, they're also removing people like Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell from their committee assignments. Yesterday, I think it was the Intel Committee. And I'm wondering, have you experienced that? Has McCarthy tried to take you off any committees? I know that you don't have any committees set yet, but have you experienced that from the Republican side on your end?
No, I have this interesting position where I'm chair of the Progressive Caucus, but I actually have a pretty good relationship with a lot of those Freedom Caucus members as well. And no, that isn't something that they've tried to do to me. I think it'd be very hard. Honestly, what they're trying to do is ridiculous. Trying to take Rep. Omar off of Foreign Affairs. We have stood up strongly for Ilhan. She's the deputy chair of the Progressive Caucus. She may have a different opinion than other people do, and even within her own party, but that's not why you take people off of committees. So the irony, though, Victor, of them taking Schiff and Swalwell off and saying that they don't have credibility or trust, and then placing George Santos on two committees when the guy has lied about just about everything, and is hypocrisy at best, and just insulting to the American people at worst.
Oh, you are so right, and you mentioned the House Ethics Committee, and that is I guess the body that would look into someone like George Santos, or the subpoenas referred to, maybe not the subpoenas, but the referrals made to them by the January 6th committee. So, am I correct in saying that without that House Ethics Committee, basically looking into George Santos and actually taking up members who incited the insurrection won't happen anymore? Or is that something different from the House?
With the House Ethics
Yeah,
Committee, it is a bipartisan committee. So you have to get, even before when it was constituted properly, you had to get people on both sides. So it was very difficult, actually, in this very partisan environment
yeah.
to hold people accountable. I know I filed some ethics charges against Lauren Boebert and
Mhm,
others,
mhm.
and they were dismissed by the House Ethics Committee because we couldn't get bipartisan support. However, I think that there is outside action, particularly the the investigators at the state level, that I think the attorneys, state attorney generals and others, that might be able to bring accountability. But it is very disturbing that we don't have a functioning ethics committee because of
Yeah.
Republicans who don't want to be held accountable for violations of the law.
Yeah, it's truly revolting. I want to turn briefly to policy. You mentioned the 30% tax, basically, that Republicans are introducing in this tax bill, and you've been beating the drum on Twitter, I've seen, about this tax bill, and really raising awareness about what this means for American families. Even if it passes the House, it won't pass the Senate. So I'm wondering why you think Republicans are even introducing this bill that would do things like gut Social Security and Medicare, make inflation worse, impose this 30% sales tax. What is their end goal with this bill?
This is their extreme agenda, and they are so blind to what working people across this country in red and blue states need or want. The idea that anybody would want to propose a 30% sales tax,
Yeah.
you've seen me. I feel so strongly about this because we have the most regressive tax system in the country in my state. We have a sales tax, we don't have an income tax.
Mhm.
And we've been trying to change that for years, and we're making some headways. But I think that this is the extreme Republican agenda. I can't
Yeah.
explain it. Why would you push to make abortion illegal with no exceptions when you know that even in red states, voters are rejecting that idea? So I think that they are out of touch with working people. They
Mhm.
are beholden to corporate interests and moneyed interests and the wealthiest, and that's their only agenda, is to
Yeah.
make this just about the wealthiest individuals, and goodbye to opportunity for everyone else.
Yeah, I think every American should be furious with this. And you're chair of the Progressive Caucus. How do you and the Progressive Caucus and Democrats more broadly plan on responding to the GOP and still show that the American people that there is progress that is possible, and that there is some sort of governing happening?
Well, we're going to point out the big differences between
Mhm.
them and us. We want to save Social Security and expand Social Security and Medicare. We want to provide free college for all our young people. We are the party that delivered on climate change,
Yeah,
taking real
yeah.
action on climate change. We are the party that has done some things on guns for the first time in such a long time, but we have a lot more to do. So I think what we want to show is showcase the difference between them and us. We are for working people, poor people, people of color, young people across this country. We are for opportunity. We are for families. We are for freedoms. That's really important. I think the second thing is we want to show people what we already got done with the same kind of majority, very slim majorities in the House and the Senate,
Yeah.
but we got so much accomplished, and we want people to know that because a lot of it is going to be rolling out over the next couple of years. And then we want to be not just an opposition party, Victor, but we want to be a proposition party,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
We want to show people what we believe in and what we can do. Universal childcare, universal pre-K, big investments in housing so young people can afford to live
Yeah.
across the country. These are immigration reform to take care of our most vulnerable uh, members of society. These are the most important things. Voting rights, passing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. That's our proposition agenda. We
Mhm.
can get it if we get a slightly larger majority in the Senate, so we can get rid of the Jim Crow filibuster,
Yes, yes.
and if we take back the House and hold the White House.
Absolutely. And you mentioned so many issues that affect young people, and I'm very excited that Maxwell Frost is going to be on the Progressive
Yes.
Caucus, or he is on the Progressive Caucus. So it's really comforting knowing that. And one last question. So I know you've been really an active voice and putting pressure on President Biden to act, and I think it's been so critical. Are there any executive actions you think and hope President Biden can sign while Republicans are in control of the House?
Absolutely. We had a long executive action list. In fact,
Mhm.
student debt cancellation was a big
Yes.
part of that.
Yes.
We were the ones who helped really push that through. And we have another list of executive actions that are everything from raising the overtime pay threshold, which basically allows people to get paid for the time that they work. So it's not even giving people a raise, but it would affect 30 million workers across the country would get more
Wow.
money in their pockets if we did this. To really important executive actions around climate, around workers' rights, a number of things that we think are possible. So we will be rolling that out probably in the next couple of weeks. And I did want to just also give, since you mentioned Maxwell Frost, say how excited we are to have him. He is on our executive board, and we hope that Max's presence here and everything we're fighting for reminds all the people who are listening right now to you and to us that government is for you. You
Mhm.
can run, you can get elected, you can be involved, you can be an advocate, you can push for change. Do not give up because it is truly the biggest equalizing opportunity for justice that we have is in government. And we
Mhm.
need us at the table as activists and advocates to push that justice forward.
I couldn't agree more. And it's so comforting knowing that there is the Democratic Party right now against this really complete chaos and circus show that the Republicans are putting on. So I know I thank you, and I know every single person in our audience thanks you for your work and what you're trying to do to make our country better, even despite everything going on with Republicans. So thank you so much for being here and all that you do, Congresswoman Jayapal.
Thank you so much, Victor, to you and to everybody. Great to be with you. Let's keep it going.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.
Well, Congresswoman Jayapal is amazing. As we all have seen in her many terms in Congress so far, this is her third term. She is a force, and she is really, really amazing. So, as you saw, I think the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party couldn't be more different. And if you think that the Republican Party has any sort of proposition that is helping the American people, I think they're just showing us clearly that they don't. And so, it's a really, really comforting sign for me, at least. And I know these next 2 years won't be easy, but we do have Democrats in place who are so committed to still helping the American people. And I might say, this should be a reminder for all of us as 2024 is approaching that we must turn out to vote and vote for, the Senate, vote for the House, vote for down ballot races. Democrats are showing that when they are in charge, they are competent, they can actually govern, unlike Republicans. And so I think it's another reminder for all of us to do our part and really get out there and vote. Just a few other things that we have right before I guess say goodbye for the day is, we were talking about Donald Trump and being back on Instagram and Facebook. I think it's really dangerous, and we have the ACLU saying these things like, oh, he should be given a platform. I think that's the last thing he should be given. I think it's upon all of us to continue beating the facts and really hammering home just how big of a danger Trump is to democracy. And so that's concerning to me. The other thing that I thought was a bit hilarious but also sad is Marjorie Taylor Greene is being floated as a possible Trump VP pick. And I was joking with my friend Rachel Vindman yesterday about how Trump should do this because nothing will turn off moderates more than this. And what possible combination could you think of that would put democracy in greater danger and peril? And so that will all be watching for closely, to go from someone like Pence, who was already really extreme and who had really kind of folded to Trump, to Marjorie Taylor Greene. You can just imagine how messy and chaotic that would be. The next thing is just a development on Ukraine. The U.S. and Germany are planning to send battle tanks to Ukraine as it prepares for this intense Russian offensive. And I think there's this really symbolic element of the U.S. standing with the Western alliance to support Ukraine and to really kind of have Ukraine's back. And I think that's powerful because Ukraine is a country that's fighting for its democracy. And I think we're putting on an example by showing that we are standing with democracy, not only at home, but also abroad. And so we'll all be paying attention to what happens in Ukraine and Russia. I really hope that it settles sometime soon and we can get back to normal. But hats off to Ukraine and everything that they're doing to defend, to protect their democracy after so many months of being at war with Russia. That is all I have for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who is absolutely amazing. Tomorrow we'll be back for another episode of On the Move with someone who ran against Lauren Boebert in Colorado. His name is Adam Frisch, and he will be talking about his run for the U.S. House and what it takes to defeat Lauren Boebert next time around. It's going to be a really exciting episode, and you don't want to miss that. I will see you all tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day.